Hello lovely people and welcome back to my channel. Finally, the two pieces that I ordered from the new Pat McGrath Divine Rose 2 collection have arrived, and you're probably thinking, what are you talking about finally? You're in the Netherlands, of course things are going to take at least 10 days to 2 weeks to arrive to you. Well, let me tell you, if you don't want to hear my shipping rant, then you can just skip to whatever. I will indicate it somewhere on the screen where you can, hop on to if you want to just see the content pertaining to the products. But if you want to hear my little rant about Pat McGrath's shipping once again, then stay tuned. So when this collection was announced, yours truly wasn't in the best mental space. I was feeling a little bit depressed again because of COVID and because of the curfew that we've been having, being unable to see my friends. All of this put me in a headspace where I made the perverse decision to order her express shipping. So to the Netherlands we get two options, either the free shipping or the express shipping. I know that the express shipping is actually not available to everyone. So I thought, yay, lucky me, I can finally order and get my, products within hopefully at latest a week. So I paid the royal amount of 17 euros in order to get my products as soon as possible. And then lo and behold, a week later, my order hadn't even shipped. I placed my order literally within minutes of the release, and then a week later, I hadn't received anything, and to my utter surprise and shock and disappointment, I saw people from across the pond, from the UK, having started to receive their products by just making use of her free shipping. You can imagine I got rightfully pissed off. So I wrote to her customer service and I was like, you guys, I paid for the service I didn't receive, so I'd like my money back, please. And I have to say, they responded really quickly. I was immediately refunded the 17 euros that I had paid for express shipping. They still shipped it with the DHL Express service, so I'm really grateful for that. So I did receive my products shortly after they were actually shipped, but it's been almost 2 weeks since the launch. I would have probably received the products by now if I had chosen for her free regular shipping. I'm not sure whether I would dare to try another time or I would go as insane as to pay another 17 euros for express shipping. I might give it a try just out of sheer curiosity to see whether they're even capable of express shipping, because honestly, to me it feels like at this point they should just scrap that option altogether, because it seems like they're incapable of it, even if they offer it. Let's conclude the rant and jump into the beautiful makeup, because that's what you're here for. So the first thing I'm going to apply is the highlighter. I've applied the rest of my base. I already have bronzer, blush, you can see everything is on my face except for eyeshadow and highlighter. It comes in this beautiful cardboard packaging with the Divine Rose artistry work on it. It's really pretty. And the actual product comes in this really gorgeous, like hot pink chrome packaging. It's how I would describe it. It is made of plastic and it's not the most like weighted plastic out there. I really love how they went out there with this gorgeous vibrant color on the packaging. You have the Pat McGrath Labs logo in here, but what is the most interesting, of course, you get a mirror inside, but what's interesting, of course, is the actual product inside. Let me show you the highlighter up close and personal and just move it a bit around into the light so that you can see how it shifts from a peachy pink into a gorgeous gold duochrome. Now let us talk about the formula of this. I don't know whether if it translated on camera, but I've been waiting for her to release face products in this formula. This is her baked gelée formula, which you will also find in some of her special shades in the big Mothership palettes. This is the kind of formula that I've been wanting for her to release bronzer, blush, as well as highlighter in. The highlighter that she released with the holiday collection, the formula on that is completely different. Let me just, you know what? Let me just hold the two next to each other. So here is the holiday collection highlighter and here is the highlighter from the new collection. I don't know whether you can see how extremely different they look like. The highlighter from the holiday collection is much more dense and much more like a very dense powder that almost feels like a cream. This formula feels much more like some of her special shades in the big Mothership palettes, and I'm going to give you examples in just 1 second. I just realized that I want to compare this formula also to her Skin Fetish Highlighter Trio. Here we have her Skin Fetish Highlighter Trio. Here we have the new highlighter. You can tell that the formulas on these look much more similar to each other. However, I'm going to say even when you touch them, you do feel a little bit of difference. These are more like a baked formula, and they're still very lightweight and very airy, and they are much closer to this new highlighter than they are to the holiday highlighter. But in my humble opinion, the Skin Fetish Trio still has a slightly different formula than the new highlighter. So I pulled out the Divine Rose 1 palette just so I can illustrate what I mean. To me, this new highlighter formula feels exactly like, for instance, this shade here, the Refined Gold shade, and a little bit like the VR shade. Like, some of her VR shades have a lot of like sparkle to them. Think of something like VR Nectar or VR Fire Opal. They have this smooth formula, but they're also packed with glitter. This is like that, but without the glitter. It has more of a very refined shimmer. I just wanted to throw in real quick because I forgot to say it before. The highlighter is made in Italy, which to me once again indicates that it has been made by that special lab which specializes in her topper shades in the Mothership palettes. By now you're probably tired of me rambling about the formula on this and you just want me to swatch it and put it on my face, so let's just go ahead and do that. The formula on this is just incredibly smooth, incredibly beautiful. It looks shiny and wet, and it has the most gorgeous... I'm going to build it up a bit just so you can see the color properly. But to me, this is a peachy pink with a very light gold duochrome to it. I'm going to use my little fan brush here from M Brush by Maxineschke. It's my favorite highlighter brush. I think maybe I picked up a little bit too much. So this is the highlighter. I hope that you are able to pick up a little bit of that peachy pink golden shift that it has to it. Now, before we move into comparing this highlighter with other products that I have in those same veins, like the peachy pink golden duochrome, I want to swatch it up against the holiday highlighter. They just feel so incredibly different. So this is the new highlighter, this is the highlighter from the holiday collection. This just feels so much more dense, and clearly the tones of this are much different compared to this. This is much warmer, whereas this is what I would consider to be pink champagne. Personally, I was not a huge fan of the tones of this highlighter because it leans a little bit too cool and too silver on the face for my liking, so I do like to layer it with other highlighters to give it a bit more warmth. Now, I have, like I said, a couple of products which are in the vicinity of the undertones and duochrome of this highlighter, and the products that I'm talking about are the Nabla Skin Glazing Powder in the shade Truth, which I use as a blush, because on my skin tone it is a blush. I think if you're deeper it could be a highlighter. It's exactly that, like peach pink with a golden duochrome to it. We also have this Magic Dust Powder from a limited edition collection from MAC from a couple of years ago. This is the shade Sweet Vision, which also has these like coral tones with a little bit of a golden duochrome to it. And last but not least, housed in this gorgeous packaging from an old limited edition collection from MAC, is this blush. This is the shade Romance from Makeup Geek. So I want to swatch all of these together with the highlighter from Pat because I think they're all so very similar to each other. So here you have the shade from Pat McGrath, here you have again the shade from Nabla, this is Romance by Makeup Geek, and this is the MAC blush. You can clearly tell the difference between the four products because these three are much deeper in tone. They're meant to be used as blushes, whereas this has a much lighter base color, so it really works as a highlighter on someone with my skin tone. There you have it. That being said, I'm not sure how this is going to look like on people with deeper complexion. I feel like I've seen a couple of creators who have a deeper complexion perfectly able to rock this highlighter, but could you please let me know if you are somewhat of a deeper complexion, how does this highlighter work for you? Does it work really well? Which would mean that it really works across different skin tones. I think the highlighter is really beautiful. I adore the formula. I think it just looks so seamless and gorgeous and wet on the skin. But do keep in mind, do not over apply it because then the base color starts to darken and you're going to get like a darker streak on your face. I do think I applied it a little too intensely today. I've rambled about that highlighter for a solid 10 minutes, so let's proceed to the next really interesting and exciting product in this launch, which is the Eternal Eden Look Squad, which looks like this. Once again, comes in very appropriate Divine Rose packaging. I'm not going to comment much more on the Divine Rose theme than I already have in several of my videos previous to this. Just like you, I'm a little bit tired of the Divine Rose collection. I think if she wants to make it like a theme in her whole line, that is fine, but intersperse it with other things. We've been like getting 1.5 years straight Divine Rose products, and I think it's enough. It's time to go in a different direction. Now, the quote itself is very girly, very feminine, and very Valentine's Day. If you were looking for a Valentine's Day gift to yourself or to somebody else, I think this quote is just so beautiful in that respect. It has 4 shades. What I think is that because the 2 mattes in here don't give you a lot of depth, this is meant to be a very easy, very quick looks type of situation. You're not going to be able to do very complicated looks with this quad, however you are going to be able to complete a look just using this eyeshadow quad. I am going to do some comparison swatches later, but for now let's just swatch the shades in the quad. So starting off with the hot pink and the once again peach pink duochrome. I think we should swatch the peach pink duochrome next to the highlighter. I did do that yesterday and they are different from each other, but I think it might be interesting to show you as well. So these are the top row shades. This is the kind of more subdued hot pink. We're going to swatch this later to other hot pinks she has had in her collection. I think this one is just a little bit more subdued, which is also how it was marketed. This is the shade Pink Mystique, by the way. The shade next to it, the peachy pink gold duochrome, is the shade Temptation, which has more of like a satin finish to that, but a very beautiful and rich satin finish. Then I want to swatch the cool toned brown mauve and the sparkly duochrome shade next to it, and those are the shades Earthly Delight and Forbidden Fruit. So here you have, I think, Earthly Delight, and this shade really entices me because it has such beautiful unique undertones to it and a very creamy formula. Both of these feel a little bit like the pink shade that was in her holiday collection, which has a cream to powder formula. And last but not least, we have this beautiful reflective look at this shade. It just swatches forever and ever. It's very creamy, very shiny, very metallic, and just absolutely stunning. This is the shade Forbidden Fruit, if I'm not mistaken. So here you have the swatches of the quad. A fear that I'm going to forget this later, let's swatch the shade from the quad, which is very similar in tones to the highlighter. So here you have the highlighter, here you have the shade, what is this called again? Temptation from the quad. Highlighter, quad. You can definitely tell they are in the same veins. In fact, I think if you're a deeper skin tone, this is going to work beautifully on you as a highlighter. On someone with my skin tone, it's probably going to work really beautifully as a blush. But you can clearly tell that the highlighter has a much less deep and pigmented undertone compared to the shade in the quad. And of course they have a completely different formula. Now, without further ado, let's just go in and do a little look. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the hot pink shade in the inner part of my crease, and then I'm going to apply the cool toned brown matte in the outer part of my crease. This definitely has a little bit of a softer hot pink tone to it compared to the hot pinks that you can find in her Divine Rose 2 and Risque Rose quad, which I really like. I prefer this more subdued tone of the hot pink instead of the really like super in your face hot pink. This just has a little bit more softness and a little bit more pastelness to it, which I really like. These are, by the way, quite powdery in the pan. They kick up quite a lot of powder, but when they apply on the skin, they feel very creamy. Going to go here around the edges and blend. Next I'm going to apply just the tiniest bit of my Pixie Epoxy, which is a glitter glue. I prefer to use my metallic shades over a glitter glue, and just apply the thinnest layer you can imagine onto my moving lid And now I'm going to take this gorgeous shade over here, which is the shade Forbidden Fruit, which just feels so incredibly creamy. This feels like Life on Mars from the Risque Rose Quad, like really, really creamy, almost like putty. And it just has the most beautiful shine on it. I'm going to apply this shade onto my lid and take it like 2/3 of the way in, leaving enough space for the fourth shade in the quad. This is a really beautiful shade. Okay, taking a little flat shader brush and going into the last shade in the quad, which is the shade Temptation, and I'm going to apply that onto the inner portion of my lid. This shade has a much more, like I said, a satin finish to it, and it's much less like textured and sparkly compared to Forbidden Fruit. But I think it's a very beautiful and romantic shade. And I think just to give a little bit more light to the inner corners, I am going to apply the highlighter into like the very inner tear duct. I'm going to keep the lower lash line pretty simple, and I'm going to once again apply the shade Earthly Delight onto the outer part of the lid, and onto the inner portion of the eye I'm just going to apply the Peachy Golden Duochrome. I'm honestly quite pleasantly surprised by these quads, outside of the fact that it's just very repetitive at this point in terms of the theme. I hear you, we are all tired of the Divine Rose collection, but outside of that, if you are coming into Pat McGrath Labs, if you have never heard anything about makeup and you're looking for a Valentine's Day gift for your significant other, then I think this is a smashing hit. Both this and the highlighter are just sheer perfection. I think the quality of the product is outstanding. I'm very pleased with the two matte eyeshadows. They just feel so creamy, so easy to use, they blend out so easily, and this shade, the shade Earthly Delight, I don't really have anything like this in my collection. I can't think of anything that is so cool toned, but at the same time so flattering and such an interesting eyeshadow. This shade I'm also very pleasantly surprised by, because it has a bit more of a muted pink, like hot pink tone, compared to a lot of the other hot pinks that Pat McGrath has come out with, which personally I feel like it's a bit more flattering and a bit more easy to use on the daily, because a lot of her other hot pinks are just so overly vibrant that they almost look offensive on like the day-to-day business. This shade is beautiful. It's actually much more punchy and much more metallic and duochromy than I expected based on the swatches, and this shade is just absolute sheer perfection. Like I said, to me this shade feels as creamy as does Life on Mars from the Risque Rose Quad, which was a special formula in her holiday collection. Now, with that said, I think all of you are probably very curious for some comparison swatches. So the first eyeshadow that I want to swatch comparatively is of course the hot pink shade compared to other hot pinks. So first things first, I want to just like visually put for you the two pans next to each other from the Risque Rose Quad and the new quad, so that you can clearly tell the difference. This is so much more vibrant compared to the shade in the new quad, and I love how much more muted the new quad is. New quad, Risque Rose. Oh, the Risque Rose one feels so creamy though. This one feels creamy, but it's more like a very light powder, whereas this really feels like a cream. Okay, this is the closest that I can do for you. Look how much more punchy and vibrant the shade from Divine Rose 2 is. So this is the shade from the Divine Rose 2 palette. You can clearly tell that this has a really beautiful sheen to it. Gorgeous formula. I really like this. I think that this one's going to be probably my favorite. This one comes as a second close, and I enjoy the formula on this one very much. Now let's swatch my absolute least favorite hot pink from Pat McGrath, which is in her Mothership Subversive La Vie and Rose 6 pan, and the shade in question is called Rose Risque. So this over here is the shade Rose Risque. Let's just quickly swatch it next to the other hot pinks. I think this has much more blue undertones to it, and I don't really like the formula. I'm not a huge fan of the formula on this shadow. Okay, See how much more blue and cool toned tones these has compared to the new shade from the quad. So here you have all the four hot pinks that Pat has ever created. Now, since I have the Divine Rose 2 palette here, let's just quickly swatch the shade Eleganza. So this shade over here, next to the Forbidden Fruit shade from the new quad. I definitely think this is just so much more deep in tone, but like they are quite similar to each other, right? Like this is deeper in tone clearly, but the sheen and the like that lavender tone is very similar. Okay, let's just swatch next to each other. So this is the quad, this is Divine Rose 2 Eleganza. Next I want to swatch for you from the original Divine Rose palette this shade here, one of the VR shades that I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's like that coral golden duochrome, and I want to compare that to the shade in the quad that has like that peach pink duochrome to it. You can see they're actually quite different from each other. This is the shade from Divine Rose, this is the shade from the new quad. They're also of course different formulas, so let's not forget that. This is the VR shade, which I think has a much more like hot pink base to it and a much more like an acid green gold duochrome, and this is just so much more subtle. Oh, let's for shits and giggles swatch this shade from the Divine Rose palette, so this matte shade over here, which is the only like more cooler leaning matte that I can think of from Pat's collection right now. I don't think the shades are going to be similar because the shade from the new quad definitely has much more like brown tones to it, whereas this is so much more like cool, almost gray leaning. So here you have the shade from the Divine Rose palette, and here you have the shade from the Eternal Eden quad. This is so much warmer in a way. I really like this shade so much. And I have just one more eyeshadow palette that I feel like has maybe like similar-ish eyeshadows that I want to compare to the new quad. Now this is one of her Blitz quads from the holiday 2019, and I want to compare this shade to the Forbidden Fruit shade, and I want to swatch this shade next to the duochrome from the Eternal Eden quad. Clearly they have very different formulas, these are much more sparkly, but I'm just curious about the undertones. So here you have the shade from the new quad, here you have the shade from the Ritualistic Rose quad, and my hands are like so covered in pigment now that it's hard to tell. But this is the new shade, and this is the shade from the Ritualistic Rose quad. Call me crazy, but I don't think these are so different from each other. Yes, this has much cooler silver lavender tones, whereas this is much more sparkly and has like this magenta purple going through it, but I feel like they're quite close to each other. And last but not least, they're not going to be similar, but I'm just curious how they look next to each other. So this is the shade from the quad, this is the sparkly shade from the Ritualistic Rose quad. Let's just swatch them next to one another. I think they're actually going to work together really beautifully. Like this layered over top of this is going to be a dream. I think these two shades are identical in the direction they were going into, like a light pink base with a golden duochrome. It's just that the one in the new quad has a different texture, a different finish, and clearly is much more subtle because of that. So in conclusion, you guys, I'm pretty happy with my purchase. I'm enjoying both the quad as well as the highlighter. I think the quad is absolutely beautiful. If you haven't purchased all of the items from the Divine Rose collection and you wanted something which is small, curated, still in the theme of the Divine Rose collection, but just not as punchy as a lot of the other releases have been, or not as cool toned as the original Divine Rose, this is going to be perfect for you. I hope that you enjoyed all of this rambling, all of the comparison swatches, the little demo of the products. Let me know whether you picked them up, what are your thoughts, how did you enjoy them. Let's chat about the Divine Rose 2 collection in the comment section below. As usual, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of my face, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!